Do you like basketball?
Mm-hmm.
I like, but I'm not good at. Yes, I'm not.
Me too.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the State of the League podcast, the only NBA podcast that's going to step up and fill the void left by one Adrian Wojnarowski. I've never said his full name before, so that's the first time. I'm your host, Jack, a.k.a. Yokes Joestar. With me, as always, is the world-famous Pablo Escobar, and today we are joined by Joel Moran of the Pick a Side podcast, famous, smart football, basketball Twitter guy. Joel, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I've been in football mode, and I'm glad that I'm getting back in basketball mode with this podcast and talking about the Timberwolves because they're an interesting team, very polarizing. I feel like after they made the conference finals last year, people are just writing them off this year. So I'm interested to hear your guys' opinions on it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Woj retired, and his last Woj bomb was on Isaac Okoro, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Worthy.
It's a good contract, you know. It's like 3 years, $38 million for a solid 3-and-D guy, you know. Out with a fizzle, not with a bang, I suppose. Pablo, how are you doing today?
You're honestly, you're just breaking the news to me that Woj is retiring. I'm just processing this.
Oh my God.
He's retiring from breaking news, but he's the GM of St. Bonaventure's men's basketball team.
Oh,
yeah.
No way.
Yes.
He has been, oh my God. That is one thing about him. He went there like in 1950 or whatever. And so it's his Twitter is all just breaking news. And then it's St. Bonnie is like, can't believe we didn't get in the bubble or whatever.
Oh, it'd be cool if he's like actually good at that too. On top of being like, I don't know, this era defining reporter and everything. That would be pretty neat. So I'm excited to see what he does, definitely.
Honestly, there's no way he's going to be good at it. Like, I don't know. Do those skills transfer? Like, I don't know how much he knows about basketball.
Yeah. No, I don't think they transfer at all. Like, if you... like if you're just like the first guy to knock on this 3-star recruit's door or something, you get to break his recruitment process.
He just texts the recruits, I heard you were talking to St. Joseph's or whatever, and I can't believe you betrayed me.
Oh my God. Yeah. But we're not talking about that. We are talking about the Wolves, who I don't know. Maybe we could clip it. We had Sponhauer on last episode, and towards the end, we did like a 15-minute just shit segment on like the way people talk about Anthony Edwards. Because Sponhauer,
yeah,
and myself too, a little bit, like specifically, I'm just salty about Game 7, and that's something that's like going to permeate this podcast. It's going to pop up time and time again. But like we were both talking about how like the aura of Anthony Edwards like fundamentally alters the way that people view him. Like he is so popular and he has so many like pretty cool moments that like oftentimes it does not matter what happens on the basketball court. And so, yeah, we got some toxic feelings out in that segment. And so I think I'm nice and refreshed to come in and have a pretty objective point of view on like what Minnesota's doing heading into next season.
Man, everybody turned on Anthony Edwards so fast. He came into the playoffs. After the first 2 series, he's the next big thing. He's all this. They lose to the Mavericks in the conference finals, and now it's like he got swept in the first round. I can't stand it, man. I can't stand it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that leads us into question 1 pretty well. And I think the Timberwolves are in a weird spot. So how do you feel about where the Timberwolves currently sit as a franchise?
I feel comfortable. They got the age-defining player in Anthony Edwards, and I'm glad that you got your toxic thoughts out of the way last podcast because I'm about to do some intense glazing right now, right? And
right.
I've been having this take for a while. I wrote it down on my notes so I didn't forget it. I said, oftentimes when a prospect comes into the NBA, they're heralded as a generational prospect based on their traits. But, of course, it's not all about being a prospect, right? Because Steph Curry's a generational talent because of what he's proven in the NBA. Jokic, the same thing. And not that Anthony Edwards is on their level in terms of accomplishments, but I do think that Anthony Edwards is a generational talent. And it's because of what he's accomplished at such a young age. When you look at the playoff numbers that he's had, players in NBA history to average 400 or to have 400 points, 100 rebounds, and 100 assists in a single postseason at age 22 or younger, it's only LeBron James and it's only Anthony Edwards. In a player's first 25 playoff games, only one player since 1972 has averaged more points per game than Anthony Edwards. That's Luka Doncic. Luka averages 32.5, and then Anthony Edwards averages 27.7 points per game. And if you adjust for all-time standing, Luka is number one, and Anthony Edwards is still number 6. I think the expectations for Anthony Edwards coming into this year, or coming into the last season, I should say, was making an All-NBA team and winning a playoff series. And he made the All-NBA team, and he also went to the conference finals. And yes, Rudy Gobert plays a big role in that. I will never diss Rudy because he anchors that defense, and Cat had some blow-up games. But, I mean, they were winning series because of Anthony Edwards. And you see all the multiple 40-point games that he has already, the most for a player as young as he is. So I think Anthony Edwards right now is like on the trajectory of really becoming a bona fide generational talent. He is an era-defining player. And the weird thing about the Wolves is that they have this player, but they have this supporting cast that I don't know if it's good enough to fully win it all. Like I don't know if I trust Karl-Anthony Towns. I don't know if I trust Rudy Gobert in a deep playoff run if they're in the NBA Finals. I don't trust Mike Conley anymore. At one point I really did, but now I really don't. And they drafted Rob Dillingham, and they're hoping that he can add some shot creation spark. But where this roster is now, they kind of need that production now. And I don't know if Rob Dillingham is going to be ready to produce right now.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm on board with most of that. In terms of like generational prospect, I think this is almost a prove it year for a bunch of different questions we have about the Timberwolves. Coming off of, because you're never going to feel like horrible making the conference finals, even though the result that you saw in a loss even is not what you want to see. Like, it wasn't as competitive as you would hope given where like the roster is at and everything. But it's a prove it year, I think, for Anthony Edwards, and whether or not, like, I think Anthony Edwards moving forward, the floor of what he's going to be is probably like a Devin Booker level player. Like, I expect him to be perennial all-star, all-NBA kind of guy for the foreseeable future. And this year, if he can prove to me that like he's got the trajectory like a top 5 player, not like a top 8, top 10 player, then that makes me feel a little bit different about the Timberwolves moving forward. And then the rest of the team, we need to see like consistency out of Karl-Anthony Towns on a game-to-game basis in the playoffs, but even just like helping the offensive woes that really plagued the Timberwolves for all of last season. Like, I think if they're going to be a better team than they were last year, it will be because the offense isn't like horrific in the half court this time around. And so we have questions about that. I think defensively, we pretty much know that they're going to be really good. And then proving it, I think I would like to see Jaden McDaniels prove it a little bit more, especially as a shooter. And then Naz Reed, if they can expand his offensive role, like if he can shoulder more of a burden that doesn't go on to Anthony Edwards' shoulders, I'd love to see him prove that as well. So I think there's just, in terms of like the teams that were really competitive in the Western Conference last year, the Wolves are unique because they didn't make a ton of changes, and there are still a ton of questions that I want to see them answer. Pablo, how do you feel about them?
Yeah, I'm on the same wavelength. It's interesting about Anthony Edwards because we kind of saw it all during the playoffs, so any perspective makes sense. Like for the entire first series or first half of his playoff games, whatever it was, he was shooting like Steph Curry, and it was like, okay, maybe all the hype was justified. Maybe this guy is just Steph Curry, but also if he's the most athletic guy in the league. And then in the Nuggets series, he ended up having some real stinkers, and it was like, oh man, what is this guy if he's not shooting jump shots at an unsustainable rate? And then And then he was still getting like a lot of praise even when he was having bad games. It's like, is this full Kobe effect? Is
He's
it
got
his aura
motion,
getting
dude. He's
people
got motion.
getting people wins? And so yeah, with him, it'll be good to see another playoff run, and it's good that he has mostly the same supporting cast, so we'll get more of an indication of who he really is. When it comes to the rest of the cast, we gotta hope that Towns can be better, right? Or is this just who he is? I want to hope that he could like be closer to regular season Towns for the entirety of a playoff run. But yeah, they're bringing back a stacked defensive roster. When it comes to Rob Dillingham, I'm a little bit worried. I don't know how impactful he'll be because number one, he's got the rookie element. It's already hard to contribute as a rookie, and number two, like seeing all the Bryce Young stuff in the NFL and looking at it with hindsight, like, you know what? He was really, really tiny. Maybe we should have seen this coming. And he wasn't like a freak athlete. I'm looking at Rob Dillingham, obviously different game, different position, but I'm like, I don't know. He's really, really tiny. The playoffs are very physical. So I think that's not enough for me to boost him up. But yeah, I think they're still a strong contender for the conference finals. And if it's possible for them to walk into next year and Anthony Edwards is just great all the time. And then Jaden McDaniels is shooting better from three. Towns is more consistent. Everyone's more consistent. And they're the same team or an even better team. So I think it's all possible.
I think the worst possible outcome is that Rob Dillingham is pretty good in the regular season and Emmanuel Quickley style is just not good in the playoffs. That's like the worst case scenario because I experienced that as a Knicks fan. And I'm just like, where is this version of IQ that I saw that was so amazing? He was so great defensively. So I think that's the worst case scenario. Yes. Like I was like, he should have won 6th Man of the Year. And then Brogdon is like doing so well in the playoffs and IQ is thinking it up. So yeah, listen, I experienced that already. I think the Cat proponent is really the biggest part of it, and it's really going to be on him because I feel confident in what Anthony Edwards is going to bring on a game-to-game basis, even if he has some inefficient nights. With Cat, though, it's if he's not shooting well, he literally does not bring any positive value because he cannot penetrate on offense and get defenses to commit to him. Whenever I think there was this stat that NBA University posted that for every time that Cat drives to the basket, 10% of his drives are turnovers. It was the highest rate in the league. It was like
that
10
makes
to 14%.
sense. Like when you watch, yeah.
Exactly. Like he's always losing the ball, so he brings nothing as a playmaker. And he doesn't abuse mismatches like you'd like him to. He's not aggressive in that fashion. And then in the conference finals, like, oh my goodness, everybody was shitting on Rudy Gobert, but like Cat was the biggest liability on the court. And he was the reason why their defense was so terrible. I thought Rudy Gobert like got all the blame for that, but it's if he's not adding anything offensively, defensively, he's so terrible, and it makes him borderline unplayable at times.
Yeah, and it's really tough. I mean, specifically the mismatch part of it, where I don't know exactly the measurables of each, but like just looking at them visually, PJ Washington should not be able to guard like a Karl-Anthony Towns post up. Like that just shouldn't be something that you let Dallas get away with. And the fact that worked incredibly well. Like PJ Washington was really, really good. I mean, that's just kind of PJ, Aaron Gordon a little bit, like kind of a smaller, more mobile defender that can beat him to all of his spots. It's really difficult for Cat to deal with. And it's tough because at 28, probably going to be 29 years old next season, I don't expect him to make any like big leaping strides. Maybe he becomes a little bit more comfortable in an offense that's really only had like a season and a half, 2 seasons to develop. But I feel like that's kind of giving him a break where you don't necessarily need to. The other side of that coin is like, hey, you're an all-star, you're an all NBA level guy, you're the self-proclaimed best shooter of all time. We can't have 2 games in a 7-game series where you are like a complete non-factor on. I mean, I won't say in the Nuggets series, I thought he was a factor defensively all the time. Like I thought his size is what made it such a difficult matchup for Denver, even though like obviously Jokic is going to give problems to whoever you put in front of him. just making the aggregate of the team so big is helpful, but that doesn't work in every series like we see in Dallas. And so, yeah, when you are a complete non-factor offensively, and at best you're just kind of like helping on defense, you're not like a game changer on that end of the floor. That's not somebody that can be the second best player on a championship team. And so like that's one of my big questions for them that I wrote down, is just this idea that like if this season ends and you still feel far away from the championship, it does feel to me like the piece that if something about this roster is going to get really shaken up, the first place you'd look is probably Karl-Anthony Towns.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's the one player that you need to trade, but this contract is so massive. It's like,
Oh my
where can you
God.
even trade him to? And that's the other thing with this. If the Wolves are far away, let's say this year it ends in a depressing fashion, do they just think of maybe resetting this roster around Anthony Edwards for the future? So not only trading Cat, but also maybe thinking about moving off from Rudy Gobert as well, because he's an older center. Do you just kind of go back to the drawing board and just try to maximize your flexibility?
Yeah, I mean,
it's risky for sure, because if they do have another bad year, like if we get more evidence that Gobert and Towns aren't hanging in the playoffs, then that's gonna dent their value, and they're both making a lot of money, right? So and they don't have a lot of picks, so they wouldn't have that many options. So I think they could definitely trade them for something, but to like salvage a contending roster out of that, that'd be so hard. And then, you know, immediately as soon as that happens and they start struggling, people are like, Minnesota kind of sucks. Anthony Edwards kind of wants out of there, doesn't he? They get him to LA. So that would be, yeah, they kind of went all in with the Rudy trade. So it's unless they can pull off something crazy, I'd be worried about that.
yeah, it's I don't know. It's just tough. And this has kind of been like the problem, even when everybody was overreacting to the Gobert trade, myself included. I'm not going to act like I wasn't like, this is actually a good trade. You know, they're playing 3D chess. I was like, no, this is bad. And I overreacted too. It's better than people thought. But the one thing I thought when it happened that has remained true this entire time is that you are locking yourself into like 23 to 25, 26-year-old Anthony Edwards, spearheading the best version of the team that you're ever going to give him. That's what the Gobert trade does. And that's kind of where we're at right now, where it's like, yeah, you see, I think last year you see flashes where if Anthony Edwards was in a situation like Orlando or whatever, where the team is ascending around him, then it's really easy to see this vision of like, holy shit, like this guy is going to be one of the best players in the league, while the roster around him is the best version of themselves. And now you see those flashes from Anthony Edwards, and it's like, well, he's going to be great. But, like, is it going to be like a mid-2000s Timberwolves situation where he's the corpse of Rudy Gobert is still, like, blocking shots and providing nothing else? And, yeah, it's just I don't have, like, a great solution for it, because I agree with Pablo. If they look bad, then the trade value is going to be tough. And if they look good, then you probably don't want to trade them. So it's just it's kind of confusing in terms of what the path forward is for them. Yeah, I don't know. How do you feel, Joel?
I think what we're getting at here is that Anthony Edwards has to carry.
Yeah.
if they're gonna make the NBA Finals, it's gonna be because of a historic Anthony Edwards like run. Which, hey, we were close to getting it, but then the conference finals he just came short. Do you think that if the Timberwolves went to the finals instead of the Mavericks, it would have been a better series?
I think it's possible, but at the same time, I don't think. I think if the Celtics are going to shoot the three that way, I don't really think it matters how good your rim protection is. And I also don't think they have like a great guy to throw at Jason Tatum to stop him from like initiating all of that offense. Because I like Jaden McDaniels. I think he's good. And obviously Tatum is like a way different matchup than Luka in terms of the shit that you need to bring to the table. I still think Tatum is a little too big for McDaniels, and so I think you would probably still have a lot of the same drive and kick actions that worked really well against Dallas. You would just have like better guys contesting them, but I think it's probably still like a sound Boston win.
Did the Mavs win one game or did they get swept? I don't remember.
They won the one where Derek Lively hit the corner three. I'm pretty sure like everybody was hitting shots for Dallas.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, they're probably screwed also. But I think it would definitely be different. I think they would stand a better chance defensively. But offensively, like Luka was doing as much as he could in that series, but he was kicking out to shooters who couldn't make shots. So I think they would have a little more trouble doing that because I'm just thinking like they shut down Derek Lively by throwing Jason Tatum on him and breaking up the lobs. Like I'm sure Jason Tatum could probably like guard Towns and whatever obstacles they have to throw at them. So I think ultimately, yeah, I think they'd be in trouble also at a similar rate.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, and it's tough also because like one of the things, if you want to point to like Anthony Edwards' struggle this postseason, is when teams really forced him to make like not impossible passes, but just like he's a good playmaker. Teams put him in position to make like really high level passes, and he
throw that skip pass all the way on the other end of the court. Throw the lob.
Yeah, and it was tough because they put him in position where it's like I could make this pass. Or I could take this pull-up mid-range. And the mid-range.
Remember me last series? I was hitting 100% of those. Maybe it'll start again.
Yeah. And so I think Boston is well-equipped to do that with like White and Holiday, just kind of like making his life very difficult offensively. And then, they don't have a ton else to throw. So I think it'd still be Boston. This one, okay, the second question I have is how do you feel about the offseason moves? And I guess my follow-up to this would be like, do you feel like there's a path forward for the offensive issues to be remedied a little bit this upcoming season? How do you feel about it?
I think the only chance for it is for Anthony Edwards to be more efficient in the regular season, because in the regular season his mid-range wasn't efficient. He shot 36% on his mid-range shots, and in the playoffs that ballooned up to like 44% around there.
Yeah.
So in the regular season he has to become an efficient mid-range shooter. You need growth from Cat as well, just like inserting his dominance. And with Rob Dillingham, he just has to provide something. When in the offseason, I don't know if you guys seen this report, but Tyus Jones was picking between the Wolves and the Suns. I thought if Tyus Jones went to the Timberwolves, it would have made them a lot better because of his veteran presence, and you're kind of not banking on that question mark with Rob Dillingham. I think their offseason moves, it just really was one. It was trading for Rob Dillingham, and Pablo mentioned his size issues, and I think that can be a concern if the shooting doesn't translate like we think it's going to translate. If the shooting is fine, I think he can be more than good enough as a spot-up shooter and just give the Wolves more spacing, because the Timberwolves spacing is really not that good. Like Jaden McDaniels was a sub 34% three-point shooter, and Rudy Gobert can't shoot, obviously. Mike Conley, he can shoot, Cat can shoot, and Anthony Edwards is like an average three-point shooter, but he's the one initiating. But there are two guys on the court at all times for the Wolves that you feel comfortable with leaving wide open, and I think that's the major issue for their offense in totality.
Yeah, I think that's a fair analysis of it. It's tough. It's tough with like the combination of Gobert and Conley, because I feel like if you stop playing Conley, then like the reality of who Gobert is offensively kind of comes out, and it's just I mean, I like Anthony Edwards a lot. It's hard to make like a Gobert pick and roll a really productive offensive possession. And Conley, he's good at that. Like he's been good at that for a long time, but I think that's something that Tyus Jones would also have been capable of. And I think that would have been a good pickup for them as well. It's weird. Monte Morris was on this team, right? And he just didn't really get run at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I don't know. That's not that surprising. Like, it's not like Tyus Jones, I think, is a soundly better player, and it's not even like Tyus Jones is a world beater or anything. It's just surprising for a team that like really did struggle so much offensively, and especially the second unit, outside of like Naz Reed, when you didn't have Anthony Edwards or Karl-Anthony Towns with the ball in their hands, it just felt like there was not a whole lot being produced. I figured I would have seen a little bit more Monte Morris, but I don't know. Losing him, if he's not playing anyways, it's not like it matters that much. So yeah. How'd you feel about the offseason, Pablo?
I hadn't seen that report. I can't believe he picked the Phoenix over Minnesota because, number one, I think Minnesota is clearly a better, more realistic situation to go farther in the playoffs. And number two, isn't he from Minnesota? I'm pretty sure he's like a Minnesota hometown guy,
Let me see.
and he played for Minnesota already. So that's an insane decision. But yeah,
he is. He's from Burnsville, Minnesota.
I think it's because the Suns guaranteed him. Don't quote me on this because I don't know if Bradley Beal's like getting kicked to the bench, but I think that Tyus Jones is starting. I think that's why.
Okay.
So he's like, I'm gonna cook.
Yes, the Suns said, "Listen, you're gonna start for us," and the Timberwolves were like, "Hey, you're our backup point guard. You know, you're gonna be with Naz Reed coming off the bench." And Tyus Jones wanted to be a starter.
That's insane.
Wow. He shunned potential Naz Reed minutes. This guy, does he have CTE? That's how you become a superstar. But yeah, that's an insane decision. He would have been great for them. Because he's a good defender and just like a solid presence. And a guy who can just exist on the court in the playoffs. And so whenever you get to a team of this caliber and they make an addition, that's my thought process is like, can you exist on the court in a playoff series? And when they get Joe Ingles, I'm like, I don't know, man. it's
the answer is no at this point in his career. Yeah.
If he couldn't do it with Giannis, I don't know if he can do it with you. Yeah. So then they didn't do it. Kyle Anderson did at some point and some spurts, but was he benched in the Nuggets series?
He was benched at some point. I think it is probably like the back end of the Nuggets series. Once they switched it so that Aaron Gordon was like bringing the ball up, I think that fucked up with his minutes a little bit. Yeah. Okay. The last 4 of the Nuggets series, he's playing 9 minutes a game. So yeah, he was out of the rotation a little bit there.
Yeah. So I do think that loss hurts a little bit, even though he's another guy who can't shoot. But they and a guy who Minnesota fans will be like, well, we couldn't even count on him when at the highest level. But still, I just think there's a better chance at him being a productive playoff player at this point than there is Joe Ingles. I don't know how much Joe Ingles will realistically see.
I mean, it's between Rob Dillingham, Terrence Shannon Jr., and Joe Ingles for who is going to be in the playoff rotation. It's going to be one of those 3. And you don't feel confident in any of those 3, realistically.
Maybe Luka Garza steps up this year.
The first team to run 2 big lineups with the starters and the bench. I like it. Oh, my God. Yeah, with the Tyus Jones Suns shit, it's insane to me because I also feel like if you go to Phoenix and you're a starter and they're bad, and you go to Minnesota and you're a bench point guard, and like they don't win the title, but you're still like good and you help be like a productive bench offense and stuff. Which of those is better for like your longevity in the league? Because that's with the whole like, oh, the NBA middle class is being decimated by the second apron and everything. That's who is really being affected is like the Tyus Jones of the leagues. They need to make sure that they're going to get like their next contract and shit. And I feel like Minnesota is a way better situation to like be looking for your next contract in than it is in Phoenix. Like I think Phoenix could just be this complete dumpster fire. Like they could be good, don't get me wrong, but by the end of the season, they could also be just like something that nobody really wants to touch any of their players outside of like the really high level stars. So yeah, that's crazy. I don't know. I think if you're going to look for one person to be in the playoff rotation, it's probably Dillingham. I saw some Wolves fans high on Terrence Shannon Jr.'s defense. They were like, I don't know. It was clearly Cope, but it was like, well, if we had him to throw at Luka, then shit would have been really different. It's like that
You
is
know who could
Luka.
guard Luca? The guy who played 4 years of college basketball. That guy can do it.
He's beefy. He's stocky. That's what we needed. McDaniels doesn't have that. But yeah, I think like there will be games. The Dillingham Naz Reed bench runs. There will be games where it's incredible. It's so cool. Just making it like a sustainable attack. That's really one of the big questions for Minnesota this year, because offensively, that feels like a level of talent. Like if Dillingham is just kind of what people think he can be, not even like an exceptionally good rookie, but just like solid offensive creator off the bench next to one of the better offensive big men in the league in Naz Reed. That's a level of offense in the second unit that not many teams have. And so it would be hard for other bench units in the playoffs to counteract. But yeah, that's far from a guarantee with Dillingham. So it is a little scary. I won't lie. All right. The third question I got for you is about the expectations for this upcoming NBA season. What would a disappointing season look like for the Timberwolves versus what a surprisingly nice one would look like?
Worst case scenario, you're a playing team. Second worst case scenario, you lose in the first round. And then third worst case scenario, you lose in the second round. I think you have to get to the conference finals of the NBA finals. And we talked a lot about what Rob Dillingham can be or cannot be.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think Rob Dillingham is going to be a good player. I just don't know if it's going to be immediate. I think like my projection for him is like 11 points per game this year. I think he could get to that off the bench just with his elite 3-point shooting.
He's shifty.
Yes, I love Dillingham a lot, and that backcourt, my goodness. But to the Tyus Jones point, like if they had Tyus Jones, I think that Tyus Jones could have also been like the future point guard of the Timberwolves for like a little bit, because Mike Conley's like on the way out. But maybe what intrigued him to play with the Suns is just their play style. With D Book and Bradley Beal and KD, you're going to be running in transition a lot, and maybe that's something that he's just like, listen, I just don't want to deal with Gobert and Cat all the time and like what this offense is going to be. I'd rather play in this fun basketball environment.
With small forward Bradley Beal. Hell yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I think anything short of the conference finals, that is a disappointing season. And also, Edwards has to take another step. Like if I kind of want to see him average 29 a game this year. Like I want to see him take that type of legitimate MVP leap to where we're looking at him like one of the very best players in the NBA.
Yeah, I don't think either of those are really unrealistic expectations. I guess one of the other questions I wrote down here is, so it does feel like there's a bit of an arms race going on a little bit in the West in terms of OKC, probably the best offseason in the league, picking up Caruso and Hartenstein. Dallas, polarizing. I don't know how the Clay addition is going to work out. It's high upside, but it could be bad. And then Najee Marshall, I think, is a good pickup for them as well. When you look at those two teams and then you look at the Timberwolves, how do you feel about like if you pulled the second round matchup with one of those guys? I mean, how are you feeling?
I don't feel great. OKC is just a cheat code. I mean, Sam Presti has acquired so many draft picks and they had so much cap space that they were able to have the best offseason with adding Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso. I think that is the early West favorite. I think everybody like agrees upon it. And maybe it's going to be something where like they just roll through the West, or maybe they come up short. Who knows? But they're the most talented roster in the Western Conference. And with Minnesota, I don't think you have a consistent SGA stopper. That's number one. And I do think that Lou Dort can give Edwards trouble and Caruso can give Edwards trouble. And the fact that you can have those two guys be interchangeable on defense against Anthony Edwards or against anybody you go against, I think that's what makes OKC so overpowered, is that they have the ultimate versatility, and adding Hartenstein, it now fixes their big man problem. So now they can actually rebound the ball. It's like every one of their holes they had, they fixed it like so perfectly, but they had the flexibility to, and that's the most important thing in Minnesota. Like you said, like they're tied into this current core. So unless we get multiple leaps from players, like we can trust Cat and Gobert, Jaden McDaniels now is more reliable offensively. It's tough to match up with any of those teams, and I don't think they beat Dallas again either. Like I think Dallas right now I'm kind of leaning on them to make the finals again because
Yeah.
I'm that high on Luka. The fact that Luka was the best player in the playoffs and he was hurt, I feel like
Hmm.
speaks volumes. Like if we get a healthy Luka, I don't think we're prepared for what that could potentially look like in the playoffs again.
Yeah. Pablo, how you feel?
Well, first off, going back to the Tyus Jones thing, I was thinking, you know what I bet his perspective is. I bet he watched the finals and he thinks he can be Derek White. He's like, okay, Durant, Beal, Booker, and me. That's basically the Celtics. I'm just like Derek White. I play defense. I've been underappreciated for years. If I'm just in a situation where they let me cook, I'm gonna make $140 billion. So I bet that's the rationale. But yeah, just I have a question for you, Joel. Do you think so? You're super duper Anthony Edwards pilled, and we right now we have this top tier in the NBA that's clearly Giannis, Embiid, Jokic, and it seems like Luka broke in there this past year for most people. Is Edwards there for you right now? And if not, do you think he'll be there at the end of the season?
No, he's not there, and it's a tall task to ask him to be there at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I think Edwards has changed around the Timberwolves franchise, but Luka is a different level of player. And I
Hmm.
even put Luka a step above SGA, and I think SGA is a step above Anthony Edwards. Like I think Anthony
Mm.
Edwards more realistically, maybe he can get to like the SGA tier of things, getting into that top 3 tier, and I do count Embiid as well in the regular season, not in the playoffs. The top 3 for me,
He's
just
a
in
loser.
totality,
He's a crybaby. Oh my
is
god.
Jokic, Giannis, and Luka. It's just gonna take a couple jumps because of what Luka can do as a scorer, but then also what he brings as a playmaker. This is probably the one of the 5 most complete offensive players that we've seen in the history of the NBA.
Hmm. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to ask that because, like, yeah, there's just an impact that I mean, Jokic, Giannis, and Luca, and then I maybe like Embiid in the next series or whatever. But for the most of his playoff career, he has not had it. There's an impact that those 3 guys have on just the overall series of basketball that Shea didn't have this year. Despite I think Shea in the Dallas matchup specifically with how well Lou Dort went at Luca, Shea is probably like the best player in that series, if not like 1A, 1B with Luca. And OKC really was like still there was a gap between them and Dallas. And so like that's when we talk about impact on the overall series. I think Anthony Edwards is just like, yeah, a little bit behind those guys. And I think there's probably, it feels right now like he's like overwhelming people with his athleticism. And then when the jump shooting comes around, like you get these flashes of like, okay, well, that's like an unbeatable player. But I think when he takes the SGA step of like, I don't know, slowing things down a little bit, picking his spots to be like super athletic, but then also being a little bit more composed when he's within the 3 point line, when he's in the paint and whatever, and like using that to make I don't want to say better decisions. He's still like a really good driving kick guy and everything, but yeah, there are just clearly spots where he's like behind those guys offensively. And while he's like a really high level defender, it's always going to be difficult for like a perimeter guy to match the overall impact of like a 30 and 10 offensive player just by like being a good scorer and a good defender. That's always really tough. So I think, to be honest, if Ant got into where Shea was last year, for me, that is like a glowing success of a season for him. I'm not expecting him to be Luka, Giannis, Jokic tier. Yeah, I think the tier below is like reasonable, but it would be really good if he got there.
No, I agree. And even SGA tier is kind of a long shot. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because SGA is an elite driver, an elite mid range shooter, and we just have the mid range shooting. We have yet to see Edwards be efficient in the regular season. So, like, now I'm kind of switching my stance a little bit. If the Timberwolves just get a major leap from Anthony Edwards again, I think that is something to be happy about because even if they lose early in the playoffs, you could say at least we know Anthony Edwards is this caliber of a player. Now it's just about how we build around him, and we know what we have to fix. But if you lose and Anthony Edwards doesn't take that next step, then it's kind of like, okay, we may be overvaluated what his ceiling is going to be. And then I think that's kind of where Timberwolves fans are like a little bit more down on themselves. But as long as Anthony Edwards makes a sizable leap, I think there's going to be excitement.
Pablo, how you feel?
Yeah, that's if we come out of if he spends the entire playoffs next year just making every single jumper again, then yeah, I think we'll be a lot less worried about the future, because then you're just thinking, okay, get rid of Gobert maybe, then let's do Towns, Naz Reed, just stand on the 3-point line, just open up the paint for this guy. Literally impossible to stop him. He's a freak. So I honestly hope he jump. I also don't think he'll jump into that tier, but I would hope he would jump into that tier just because it would be cool. But also you said the with the defensive impact, like the perimeter defense, another issue for him is it's just so hard to be the best offensive player and the best defensive player. So he's got to, and he had trouble balancing that at times in the playoffs too. Like his defense would slip because he had a bigger load to carry. So that'll be another balance too. I wonder if we'll see a more concerted defensive effort this year, or if he's realized like, oh, I'm gonna have to do more offensively this year. Let me take a step back. Let me do a little hiding on the corner, little team defense action instead of stepping up to Kawhi Leonard or whoever.
I don't know if it's just me, but when I watch Anthony Edwards, I get a feeling. I get this sort of energy.
You get an aura. You feel a certain aura.
I feel that energy. It's just sometimes I just feel like this guy's the most unstoppable player on the court. And when I see those flashes and bursts from him, like I remember in the regular season last year when they faced Indiana and he had like the game-winning block and then he had the game-winning basket too. He just gets into these takeover modes that I think if he taps into more consistently, and he even did it in the playoffs, like game 1 against the Nuggets when he dropped 40, like he gets into these modes where he is legitimately unstoppable. And it just sucks that he might not have the roster that can properly support him because, like you said, he is unstoppable when he's driving to the basket. The problem with Minnesota is that these lanes are clogged for him and he can't do it as consistently as he wants to. So he's kind of forced into taking these jump shots because they're the best shot available to him. But if you play with a more spaced out court, we're going to see like a version of him that can average 30 a night. Yeah.
Respect to him. Like there are a lot of personalities we've seen throughout the course of NBA history who would like throw the ball at Rudy Gobert's head like two or three times a game for like being in the way that Gobert does, where you're just like, oh shit, he's got to step on this guy, and then like you look to the paint and it's just like Gobert is like setting a screen on Edwards, like he's like running into him or something, and yeah, so I agree with that. The lanes are clogged, and it's just kind of the reality of like having this guy who is a game changer defensively. It's so, I don't know, like it feels tough to criticize Gobert in today's like climate because everybody's like, Gobert's fucking terrible. Like he's not a good basketball player. And so I have to be like, he's just like not good at offense and stuff. Like
he's a specific basketball player. He's not bad. He's specific.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I don't think those lanes are going to get unclogged next season. I mean, unless he
gets that 3-point shot this year.
Well, he's been in the gym, you know.
Gobert? Are there videos of him making threes?
Yeah, in an empty gym. So that's going to translate.
Let's go person by person. One person in the gym, 2 people in the gym, till 30,000, and he's splashing threes.
We need more Cat and Naz Reed lineups this upcoming season to open up these lanes for my boy Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, and that's another thing. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a coach. I'm an idiot when I'm compared to anyone even close, like NBA coaching.
Many people are both, though.
Yeah, definitely. But like when I watch Minnesota, I'm like, sometimes you just want them to say fuck it and like just roll out Naz and Cat and Anthony Edwards and do like some let them cook offense and just like let it happen. Especially like the regular season. I mean, the regular season this year is going to be fucking brutal. Every game is really going to matter in like the top 5 of the Western Conference and how like home court advantage shakes out and everything. But still, like, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting how they experiment with different lineups and still try to be like probably pushing 60 wins again if you want to be like a top 3 seed. So yeah. The
I
fourth.
wonder if any defensive growth from Naz Reed could be expected. Because remember the one game he had against Jokic, like the game of his lifetime, where he locked him up.
He's the Jokic stopper, baby. Dude, is game 2 the one where they like it was like literally 40 points at like halftime or something?
There was no Gobert.
Yeah. Oh my god, I forgot about that. Dude, I've literally like PTSD'd half that series out of my fucking mind. Because yeah, I remember that Gobert had his baby, and I was like, oh, stay in Utah, Gobert. That's so. I mean, you can't leave your newborn son to come play a measly playoff game, and then the news broke that he's out, and I'm like, oh, wrap it up, baby.
Jokic 40 ball.
Oh my god, and they fucking I mean, that was really like the beginning of like. At least for that series, like the Anthony Edwards aura, I feel like is like he came in and he was hype as shit that entire game, and yeah, I mean took it to us. So that was definitely tough. All right. So the fourth question I have on this list is there a midseason trade that you want or expect the Minnesota Timberwolves to make? Do you think they'll be active at the deadline at all this year, or what?
When I looked at this question, I started looking at a list of players that might be on the trade market. And I came to the conclusion that it's going to be impossible for the Timberwolves to make any sort of real trade or move for a player that we at least think moves the needle for them. Like some names that came to mind were Cam Johnson. You know, his shooting would be much needed on this team. Malcolm Brogdon, maybe getting a veteran point guard if Dillingham can't play in the playoffs. I thought about Bogdan Bogdanovic, who is a shot creator and can help them offensively as well. But then you look at their contracts, and they're all making $17 to $22 million a year. And it's like, okay, if the Timberwolves want to get any of these guys, they're going to have to give up one of their major core players, and it's probably going to have to be Jaden McDaniels. Yeah. And even with his offensive struggles, that is just somebody that they cannot lose. Like, I don't know if they get better if they lose Jaden and they add Cam Johnson. I think they get better offensively, but defensively they drop off a lot. So there's like no realistic move they can make unless it's a swing for a talented former lottery pick that, you know, is just dead in the water in a situation that's not making a lot of money, and they just throw like a second round pick at the team and they get someone like that, and maybe they can salvage someone like that's career. But like any real legitimate role player, I think it's going to be nearly impossible for them to acquire them.
Pablo, what do you think?
Hey, Jabari's out there in Barcelona.
No.
Yeah, they I don't know what kind of moves they could do. And then do they have any picks to deals, or have they reloaded yet or no?
I don't.
Well, I don't think they reloaded, and they also traded 2 first-round picks to the Spurs for Rob Dillingham.
Oh yeah.
And then those picks are in 2030 and 2031, or 2030 and 2032, one of those.
Oh, so yeah,
picks.
they're probably maxed out if they're going that far out.
So I think it's just second-round picks that they can really deal right now. And, you know, there's nobody else on the roster that you can trade. Like, you don't want to trade Naz Reed. You don't want to trade Jaden. Yeah. Mike Conley is very important to the team. You can't trade him. You can't trade Cat. You can't trade Rudy. Like, the only player they can trade is, like, Rob Dillingham, but you just drafted him. So it makes no sense. There's no flexibility with this team right now. So this entire team is reliant on internal growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They could trade Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I don't know what they're getting, but they could do it.
We'll give you Nickeil. Let us get Cam Johnson.
How much did he get signed to an extension, Nickeil?
Yeah, but I think it's like $10 million or below. I don't think it's
Okay.
anything.
How much is Cam
massive.
making?
22.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
we gotta find 12 million.
We got to
And
do
then-
some work there. Oh man, yeah. Another thing I noticed when I was looking around this roster is that Naz Reed has a player option next year. Does that worry you at all? Like, how are you feeling? I mean, have you thought about that at all? As someone who just lost an important piece in free agency, it's not a great feeling. What do you think?
I have not thought about it, and the fact that he has a player option now, I'm kind of thinking maybe he is involved in some sort of midseason trade if they feel like they cannot keep him. If they feel like he's going to decline his player option, maybe Tim Connolly's telling himself it's better to get some assets back for Naz Reed than get nothing back, and maybe he can be involved in something. But that's interesting, and I think Naz Reed is somebody that they can't lose, and now it really dims the outlook on this team long term if they lose him.
Yeah, and that's just something I've seen. Like, I don't know that I saw that a few weeks ago, and I don't know if like it's not like the media has a bias towards Minnesota or anything. It's just weird that like no, like I haven't heard that talked about at all. That he has a player option, and it's not like guaranteed that he's gonna decline it or anything. He's still making $15 million on that, which isn't like a gross underpay for how good of a player he is. Like I think he would definitely get more if he looked for a contract somewhere else or an extension with Minnesota. But 15 mil is 15 mil. And if it seems like he loves Minnesota and they love him, like the Naz Reed towel, Tim Walls, the Naz Reed tweet, it's Naz Reed pilled all over up there. So yeah, it's just it's interesting. And especially coming off the Malik Monk signing in Sacramento, which is like another thing we see where that 6 man of the year race last season, those two obviously. City of Sacramento loves Malik Monk. He loves them. He loves playing there. And he takes like a real underpay of a deal, like 4 years, I think $20 million annually. He definitely could have gotten more on the open market, but he plays where he wants to play. So it's possible that Naz Reed does that. It's just definitely something I'm going to be keeping an eye on over the next few months or whatever.
I think he'll stay in Minnesota if the contract is right. But we just saw Isaiah Hartenstein get like $30 million with OKC, and they front loaded his contract a lot, and that's why he's making that much. But I think Naz Reed on the open market's like a $20 to $25 million per year player. I think the biggest cloud over the Timberwolves right now is what's going to happen with their ownership. Is Alex Rodriguez gonna have ownership, or is the ownership gonna continue to stay with? I'm blanking on the current owner's name right now, but
Glenn Taylor.
Glenn Taylor, yes. Or is Glenn Taylor gonna keep the team? Because based on the reports that I read, Glenn Taylor was actually the one that was pushing to go into the luxury tax because he saw a window for this team to compete. Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lore, they kind of were trying to blow up the team before the year. And if they bought the team, they didn't want to be in the luxury tax.
Fake rich guys.
Yeah, so if they end up owning the Timberwolves, Naz Reed pushes them to the second apron, and now that's something that, can damage that team if they don't re-sign Naz Reed. But Glenn Taylor looks like he's more willing to maybe bite the bullet for that. So I think that's a big question with the Timberwolves, just ownership and what direction do they want to go in financially with the team.
Well, if they were the Nuggets, they would just be like, "Oh, we have Luka Garza, so Naz Reed can walk. We'll be fine. He'll step up. It'll be cool." Yeah, man. I don't know. That's interesting. We just talked with Spawnhauer last episode about how the Hornets, their new ownership group is doing this thing where every 5 years, it gets shifted to a new person. So like,
there's two guys and they take turns running it for 5 years apiece.
Okay, that sounds like fun.
So your team Plodkin or your team the other guy? I'm leaning towards being team Plodkin. So we'll be up in 5 years. Screw the next 5 years.
Little Pat Bev meme. The next 5 are mine, baby.
How much do you think when we're thinking Naz Reed open market, you said like 25 million or something maybe. I'm thinking
Yes.
like Pistons max, Magic,
Oh my God.
Orlando max. Anyone with zero shooting, they're just like, oh, a center who can make threes. I'm throwing the bag at this guy. This is gonna go crazy.
I definitely think it's a swing signing because Naz Reed, if he starts, I think can average like 20 a night in the right situation.
Yeah.
More realistically, like 18 and 8, I think around there. I think Naz Reed can average that realistically and give you like solid defense. Not anything extraordinary, but just solid defense. Maybe like in the Miles Turner mold, of just a stretch big. And that's very valuable in today's league. Like the Pelicans don't have a center. Like who's to say
Oh yeah,
that?
he'd be great there.
Yeah, next off season they just say let's go sign Naz Reed. Brandon Ingram's off our books. We have money. Let's have Naz Reed next to Zion, and I think that'd be a perfect fit for him.
God damn, I didn't even think about that. That would be sick as hell. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I'm looking at like just payrolls now and shit. It's crazy. Like Naz Reed versus Nick Claxton. Nick Claxton's making $27 million next year. And I mean, that's front loaded. So that's 25 the year after that, 23, then 20, but still nearly $100 million over 4 years for him. And so you figure that's like around what Nas would demand. And it does not sound like Alex Rodriguez wants to pay that. So yeah, I guess that's just another thing to keep an eye on in Minnesota is who ends up winning that kind of like ownership battle. So we talked about midseason trades, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Which player on the roster are you most looking forward to see progress this season?
Jaden McDaniels.
Nice.
Still up.
Yeah.
Stock is still up. We got stock. We got stock. 10 a night last year, but shot 33% from the three. I just want Jaden to get back to 38% from three, and he did it before he got paid. I think he still can do it. His form looks nice. He's going to get a ton of wide open shots. I think the days of me expecting Jaden to take this major offensive leap are over, but I'd like him to be more than a non-factor, more than a 2 on offense. Give me something. Work on your ball handling. Be a threat to at least finish at the rim and maybe make kick-out passes. But maybe that's even asking a little bit too much.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, he's my answer for this as well. And I think last year, Pablo wasn't even a host when I had you on for the Wolves preview last year. You were like my second or third guest. And I remember it was something along the lines of like, you did a cheeky, hey, this could be like the best wing duo in the NBA by the end of the year. This could be like Tatum and Brown level type guys.
Jaden.
Hey, Jaden let us down a little bit, but I'm still, 6'8", 6'9", super athletic, lengthy, toolsy wing. I'm always going to be high on those guys until they prove that they can't play anymore. It's just like my sickness. And I think the 3-point shooting, that's a place where you can look and you can be like, you have shown us that you could do that. Please do it again. I would also like to see just more, not even like supplemental playmaking, because you're not even looking to him to be like the fourth best playmaker on this team or anything, but just for a guy that's catching the ball in so many situations where the defense is like scrambling in rotation, he needs to be able to make decisions in those spots that like continue leveraging all of the stuff that Ant or Karl-Anthony Towns or whoever has already created. Like he can't catch it. And I mean, I'm fine if he puts the shot up, but there are moments where like he catches it and nothing happens. And it's those moments when you look to him as like a guy that's supposed to be finishing plays or a guy that's supposed to be a big part of the offense, when nothing happens after an advantage has been created, that's when like half court offense really starts to get like sticky and gummed up. And I think he's a spot where if that changes, shit gets notably easier for everybody else on the floor offensively. Pablo, what do you think?
I think there's an element we've forgot to mention up to this point about someone who needs to take some growth, someone who maybe needs to get a little tougher. Chris Finch, why did he sit behind the bench? He could have been sitting at the front of the bench the entire time. Is he built for the playoffs? And will he be the same coach, or is that injury going to mess him up long term? Is he a coward? Is he a fraud? Some people are asking. Not me.
Wow.
Maybe me. Some
Hey,
people.
speaking as someone who tore his ACL, I'm not the same podcaster I was. You know, these
Mm.
takes are getting off slower. It's tough. I plug it in the microphone. It's not as easy as it once was. I still do it for the love of the sport and everything, but I can identify with Finch, and so I think you're being a bit too hard on him, to be honest.
He's on washed watch right now.
He's definitely on washed watch.
No, it's kind of bizarre that he tore his ACL because I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah, no. What it was in like someone
Who
fell
crashed
into
into him? Did Jamal Murray crash into him?
No, I think it was a Wolves player. It might have been Naz Reed.
Oh, it was
let me Google it.
Conley, wasn't it?
Yeah, and
Maybe.
Chris Finch, he knew he tore his ACL instantly by his reaction. Because
Yeah.
once he
Yeah.
got ran into, you could just see the camera panic to him, and he was just like, "Fuck!" Like you knew he tore it instantly, and it was like, "Damn, wow." I have never seen that though. Move out the way, man.
He's like, I'm not even playing. I thought these days were over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Conley, right? Because he's a fake nice guy. Because they always say he's the nicest guy in the league. He's never got a technical.
Yes.
He's got pent up aggression. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. Another thing I remember heading into this offseason that it's good worked out for Minnesota is that there was a lot of teams with coaching openings that were like Mike Nori held his own.
Oh, yeah.
In those spots when Finch went down and like he had to step up and everything, and Mike Nori's still there. Like he's still just chilling in Minnesota as an assistant, and I think that's a spot where you can look to and be like losing a guy like that on the coaching staff. It normally flies under the radar a little bit, but I think it's good. If we're looking at like stuff that didn't change for Minnesota this offseason, that's a good stay the same. And so is your answer literally Chris Finch get tougher, Pablo, or is there someone you want to see get better on this roster?
No, it's probably I would like to see defensive growth from Naz Reed. Because if he is a guy who can hold up at the highest levels, like if he can hold up as well or better than Karl-Anthony Towns, then that does change like the entire calculus of this roster, I think, because then you can picture living without one of the two main bigs. You could work out which combo should we retain, because it's actually crazy that they have Karl-Anthony Towns and they also have one of the only other bench bigs and one of the only other big men in NBA history who can shoot like that and who can attack off the dribble. So yeah, I think that could be a major ceiling raiser if he's able to hang defensively, because he just brings so much on offense.
Yeah, I think I would argue he's low-key better off the dribble than Cat. I don't know. It's also tough because he's not seeing like the same. Cat's seeing like the go-to power forward defender on every team, and Naz isn't. Like he's seeing like bench guys sometimes, but damn, like the lowlights of Karl-Anthony Towns drives, it's like some of the most atrocious basketball in the league. Just like charge, dribble it off your foot, throw it to the other team. Like, yeah, it's really tough when he is not firing on all cylinders. So I think Naz defensively, and it's cool because Naz, when you talk about like guys who are 6'9", 6'10", and that fluid of a mover, and like really have like a defensive ceiling to be an impact guy, I do think Naz is one of the names that come to mind. Like he moves really like a guard when he has the ball in his hands, and so in terms of like lateral quickness and all the shit that you look for in a high level defender, he's probably solid at that stuff. It's just, I don't know, fixing a lot of the mistakes and being constantly engaged on that end. So yeah, I think that's a good answer. McDaniels is a good answer. Obviously you want Dillingham to be good, but like, we don't know what the baseline there is at all. Any other names you want to shout out, Joel?
The Naz Reed defense part was great. I like that a lot. Some honorable mentions: Rudy Gobert's 3-point shooting.
Could be the year.
Could be the year.
Anthony Edwards' playmaking ability.
Yeah.
Mike Conley adding a step, not losing a step. I think adding a step.
Nice.
That'd be very important. And Rob Dillingham adding like 10 pounds of strength to him. And I think those improvements
If
They're
you
gonna
could put
take the Timberwolves over the top.
if you could put Jared McCain's thickness onto Rob Dillingham's frame, oh my God, that's rookie of the year material right there. That's perfect. All right. So then the last question we got for you is which team do you think will win the NBA title? We're keeping a tally of everybody that we have on right now. Actually, let me I don't want to bias you with the results right now, so I just want to hear what you're thinking.
Okay. I'm guessing all the results are the Boston Celtics. That's what I'm guessing.
I can't confirm or deny at this point.
Plead the fifth. That
Yeah.
doesn't incriminate us.
I think after the Lonnie Walker signing, I think it moves the Celtics into two-peat territory, and I hate it. I really hate it.
You're in the right spot. I mean,
hate
nobody here likes them. Fuck it.
Yeah, I really don't like the Celtics, but I just don't see a world where they don't two-peat, especially after the media. I mean, listen, I am a culprit of it. I do participate in my fair share of Jason Tatum slander and tweets.
Nice.
I think it's very funny. But something about me thinks that Jason Tatum just looks at all this shit and he's about to have the best season of his career.
Revenge tour?
Damn. Okay.
And he's about to just like freaking win MVP, actually have a great playoff run, which he didn't have. I don't care about all the graphics that Celtics fans want to
You know who's had this many total points, rebounds, and assists, and it's him, it's Larry Bird, and it's LeBron James.
They love using that, and I'm just like, get the hell out of here with this. But I don't know. Part of me just feels like with so much negativity that Jason Tatum gets for like literally every little thing, he's just gonna have one of those blow up seasons where he just completely asserts his dominance. And he's on the type of team that, I mean, we just seen the margin for error that he's able to have and still win a championship. If Kristaps Porzingis is unhealthy, they showed us they can still win a championship. And if he's healthy, I mean, they're like overwhelming favorites, and it's just hard. This is the perfect roster assembled in quite some time. I think even more so than the Warriors rosters, because the Warriors rosters are like just overwhelmingly talented. But I think the Celtics are like overwhelmingly talented, but also fit together. Like you have a ton of versatile defenders who are not liabilities. You have the perfect combination of just 3-point shooting and spacing, and it just makes their offense unguardable. Like Brad Stevens has assembled the best roster that we've seen maybe in like the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. That's what were you gonna say, Pablo?
No, I think that's a hot take. I think the Warriors, the
okay.
Warriors
Don't get me wrong. Time out. I'm just agreeing with the sense that having like a borderline all defensive member at every like starting position is like a really good roster. I would still take the Warriors, like the 17 Warriors. I'm going with them.
Like maybe the thing with the Warriors, it's like okay, yes, Bob Myers like built them right. He drafted,
but
Steph,
he's
he
a
drafted
fraud.
Clay. He drafted Dre. I do think that he's not as great as he was hyped up to be.
Definitely, I'm a Bob Myers hater till the day I die.
Kevin Durant fell into his lap because of the extension they gave to Steph. That was a very fair deal for the injuries he had at the time, but he quickly just overplayed his contract, kind of like the Jalen Brunson situation now. And then the cap ballooned up, so they were able to sign Kevin Durant. Like Brad Stevens has done this while giving every player essentially like what they're worth contractually, while also making the right trades, like getting Kristaps Porzingis, who after the Washington stint, I mean, he wasn't that highly valued around the league. Nobody was like clamoring to go and get this guy. Trading for Malcolm Brogdon, trading Robert Williams at the time that he traded him at, after the injuries just piled up on him, getting Derek White, and then him becoming one of the best role players in the NBA. Like all the moves that Brad Stevens has made, it has just been more impressive than Bob Myers just like having cap space and, oh, Kevin Durant, you want to come here? Great. Thank you, Kevin Durant. Like, thank you. Like Brad Stevens has actually like assembled this roster from top to bottom, and all the moves that came along with it, like were actually genius moves. And I don't think Bob Myers can say the same thing, because with those KD teams, I mean, a big reason they didn't three-peat even when KD got hurt is because their roster was thin. Like, they had nobody else. And the Celtics, I mean, they just signed Lonnie Walker on a minimum, who I think he can actually live in a playoff setting for a couple minutes, like 10 to 15 minutes, he can hold his own. So I think that's just a major difference. Like, this team, outside of the super team Warriors, it's the best roster that has been built.
Yeah.
That perspective, I agree 100%. I think talent-wise, that Warriors team was a better team. But in terms of team building, this team is Brad Stevens' masterclass. That Warriors team is Bob Myers' luck. He walks into Steph Curry. I guess he might have drafted Klay Thompson, but in the middle of it, he's like, let's trade Klay Thompson for Kevin Love. This will be so sick. And Jerry West has to come in and be like, I will quit if you do this, you idiot. Do not do this. And then he lucks into everyone else, into Kevin Durant. They luck into Draymond Green the second round. They did not know he was going to be that good. And then the second he has to start making decisions on his own, post Kevin Durant, he's like, James Wiseman speaks Chinese at dinner. This guy is the future of our franchise. James Wiseman busts, and he's like, this is way harder than I thought. I'm going to ESPN. So I think Bob Myers is the ultimate fraud.
Yeah. I agree 100%, especially with the Draymond thing. You can never look at like a second round pick and be like, GM masterclass. Oh my God. How did they know? Because like,
Bulls fans used to claim back in the day, back when Tibbs got fired, like one of the last things was apparently he wanted to draft Draymond in the second round. Some people would be like, Tibbs knew. Tibbs saw it coming.
Oh my God. And then just one thing that made me laugh is when you said the Steph Curry signing, it was like, what Jalen Brunson has going on. What Jalen Brunson has going on is like, if the first Steph contract worked out, and then he came up due for another contract, and he's like, you can just keep underpaying me. It'll be fine. Like, I don't need all that money or anything. It's totally cool. So I'm just on board with the idea. Yes, I think probably, like, if you point to the Derek White trade by itself, probably a smarter move than was made in the entirety of like the Warriors dynasty, outside of just like, we drafted the greatest shooter of all time, like a top 11 player ever. Let's
re-sign him.
yeah, like shit like that. In terms of real GM elbow grease shit, this Celtics team is on a different level. And yeah, I think when you look at them and you compare them to the field, and you compare really, like, when you talk about how bad of a playoff run Tatum had, I mean, bad, quote unquote, however you feel about it, if Tatum is like an average jump shooter in these playoffs, or if he regresses to an average jump shooter, like if he gets back up to that the next time they're in a postseason setting, which, like, if he never makes a jump shot again, so be it. I'm wrong. I think
he did it in Team USA. He was like 0 for 16.
Listen. Not everybody's built to be an end of the bench guy. Okay, he's not a role. He's a star. But yeah, I think if like they're in the playoffs again, there's a real world where like he is like a dominant scorer. He's still got all the interior juice that he showcased in these playoffs. And then like he's hitting some of his pull-ups. He's hitting some of his threes and stuff. And that would take this Celtics team, even without Porzingis, they're probably like another tier better at that point if they have like a truly unsolvable offensive guy. So yeah, I go with them. Right now the tally is Boston 5. It's you, me, Pablo, slightly biased, our Mavs guest, and then Jackson Frank, our Sixers guest, and then Oklahoma City has Ben Pfeiffer, who we had on for the Pacers, and Matt Sponhauer from the Stay Hot Pod. So yeah, I think OKC, I see it as well. It's just like making it out of the West versus making it out of the East is so stupid. Like the West is so dumb this year. I don't like it.
There's one dark horse I'll put in this conversation that has gotten slept on. It's not the New York Knicks, and for some reason I'm not a real Knicks fan if I don't pick them to go. But I think the Milwaukee Bucks, if they're healthy, can beat the Celtics. and there has to be some luck involved. I mean, you don't trust Porzingis to stay healthy regardless. If
Mhm.
he's not playing, I think that's major problems for the Celtics trying to even contain Giannis. I think even if he does play, Giannis will still dominate. But the fact that Giannis has Dame, Gary Trent, Middleton, and Brook or Bobby Portis, he has the floor spaced out to him. They can match the Celtics' offensive production, and then it'd just be like, who can outscore who? And I do
Mhm.
believe that if you get the best version of Giannis, and Dame plays more like the Dame we know he can play like, I think the Bucks can beat the Celtics. That's the only team in the East that I actually have confidence in that can beat the Celtics in a 7-game series. I don't trust the Sixers. The Knicks don't have the offense necessary. I think if you put a combination of Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Drew Holiday on Jalen Brunson, I think the offense really gets mugged up for the entire series. It's just the Bucks. The Bucks are
Mhm.
the only team that, please save us. I'm begging.
Yeah. I mean, I would love it. It'd be cool. To be honest, if they matched up, I think Derek White and Drew Holiday are just beating the shit out of Damian Lillard. Like, I think we've already seen Dame kind of struggle making decisions in like really tough double teams, even when his burst was like better in Portland. And so if you see some of those things thrown at him in a Boston series, I mean, we're light years away from this. I don't know if it'll even happen. I feel like that's a spot where he would struggle, but that's also based on what we saw last year, which shit could change. Shit could be different. He was going through a divorce. He moved to Milwaukee. He didn't want to be there.
Mhm.
He wanted to be in Miami. And so, yeah, I think a full off season, maybe him and Giannis can actually like really run that pick and roll to what we think the ceiling of it could be. And I think Gary Trent's probably a slight step up from Malik Beasley. Probably will be able to exist defensively at least. Yeah, I don't mind throwing him into that conversation. Pablo, what do you think?
You know what? I heard what you were just saying now. I know what propaganda you were spreading. You're spreading Pelicans, Drew Holiday propaganda. It was 7 years ago.
Oh,
Let it
oh,
go. He's a
whoa.
different player. He's not the same guy.
There's
It
two of
was
them
one
now.
bad.
Derek White.
It was one bad series. No, but he has gotten a lot better since then. And yeah, it is like 1 year ago coming into the season, that was the team. It was Celtics Bucks, and it was just like once they figured this out, this is going to be literally impossible to stop because you have one guy who can shoot from half court and one guy who cannot be stopped at the rim. So that seems like a pretty good combo. But yeah, he was going through personal stuff. He's going through divorce. I think did he not live in Milwaukee in the offseason or something, or he didn't work out. That's what Doc Rivers
No,
told
yeah.
us.
He got
Wow.
to Milwaukee like 6 weeks before the season, completely out of shape. So not a great start or anything.
Yeah.
What a
So
great story if Doc Rivers takes down the mighty Celtics.
Oh my God.
that'd be crazy.
Gets another 20 years of coaching just off of the second ring. He's like choking every year except for this one.
And he's like, I told Dame to get the divorce. It was better for him or something. It'd be nuts. But yeah, Damian Lillard, maybe he marries Glorilla and then they have happy season this year, and maybe he finally practices a 2-man game with Giannis. It's so insane that they paired up and they spent the entire season being like, let's just take turns. Let's not play with each other. Let's just pass each other the ball, do our own thing. Like the psychotic.
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
and if that's going, there shouldn't be a defense on planet Earth. And probably not Jupiter or Mars either. That'd be able to stop that.
You know, it's crazy because I hate the Bucks too, but I hate the Celtics. I hate the Celtics even more. So now I like the Bucks this year. Okay, let's
Yeah.
go.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, dude. It's crazy. I don't know. Like when I think about the Bucks last year, like they would force like 3 or 4 possessions of like the Dame Giannis 2-man game, and it was clunky, wasn't working. And then Dame would run it with like Brooke Lopez, and it would be like, oh, that was a great possession. Like that was like really good offense.
And
for
Malik
everyone.
Beasley would run it with Giannis on the other side.
It's like, what is going on? So yeah, I think an off season of work that issue is probably a little bit helped out. I don't know about everything else they were struggling through. Yeah, so I'm fine with putting the Bucks in the conversation. The Nuggets, I don't want to talk about it. The Mavs. We'll see what happens with Clay. Joel, is there anything that you want to plug while you have the platform here?
Yeah, you know what? Change the tally. I'm going with the Bucks.
I love it.
So when you tell the audience and your next guest, and they hear the Bucks, like, whoa, what?
Whoa.
That's
and we
crazy.
won't even we'll be like, we have one dark horse. Guess who the dark horse is?
Yes, let's make things spicy. But to plug things in, at my social media, you can follow me at Joel V. Moran. I'm the host of the Pick a Side podcast. You guys can watch that show. We do 3 weekly episodes, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you guys so much for having me on. I'm a big fan of your guys' podcast and your individual content as well. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, very productive.
Will you be doing Caleb Williams slander?
No. I actually been doing Caleb Williams defending because I posted a TikTok about how the offensive line gave him no chance to succeed. I mean, he was just pressured constantly. And Caleb Williams is such an unlikable person to everybody else. I don't know if you guys seen this clip of CJ Stroud.
Yeah.
Yes, and I was just looking at it, and I was like, how do you want Caleb to respond? Because it's like...
Thanks, big bro. Wow.
Yeah, a quarterback that they're the same age. They're only a month apart. Caleb is only a month younger than CJ Stroud. A 22-year-old that's your same age is coming to you like, yo, bro. Like, he's trying to little bro you.
And he's telling you, stop getting hit. I got pressured 36 times on 44 drops. Oh, don't get hit? Okay.
And, the thing is, like, when athletes in general, to even play at a very high level, they have to have a certain arrogance to them and confidence to even play. So CJ Stroud telling Caleb, yo, you're a great player. You're going to be fine. Don't worry. You got the talent. Like, Caleb's looking at that like, I mean, yeah, I know I do. Like, that's why I was the first overall pick. Like, do you want me to just say, oh, thank you? Like, thank you, bro. Like, oh, my God. Like, thank you so much for giving me this advice. Like, CJ Stroud, I thought that was a moment where you could just text him that. You could just like maybe behind the scenes do that. You don't really have to do it in front of everybody. And now it made Caleb look bad. Like, oh man, this is why I want him to fail even more. He can't even take advice from Hall of Fame CJ Stroud, who has just played a season in the NFL. Like, come on, let's get out of here with that.
Oh my God.
Like, you don't ever see that. Like, between two peers, like, you don't see Jason Tatum going up to Giannis and giving him advice after a loss. Like, between two peers, you don't see that. You see that if it's like a 10-year difference between quarterbacks and they're veterans and stuff, but you don't see like Mahomes going to Josh Allen after a loss, like, yo, bro, you're going to be great. Don't worry. Like,
you've got a future.
Yeah. Like, what the hell was that? I was just like, I mean, I thought, CJ Stroud, I'm sure he had good intentions from it, but it's like, how do you want Caleb to respond realistically? Like, do you just want him to look at him like, this is the guy he's been watching growing up when they've been growing up together? Like, I don't understand.
And he's like, if I came out last year, I would have been picked ahead of you.
No, for real. That's 100% a fact.
Yeah, it's I will say, as I've gotten more into like I don't know, like opening the comments on NFL posts and shit, which is not like a necessary healthy thing to do. With that CJ video, I saw so many of that comment where it's like, this made my mind up. This is why Caleb Williams won't be good. Is this specific interaction? And it's just like, yeah. Like, that's so crazy to be like, you'll be all right, man. You'll be good. And especially like, again, football casual here, watching that final drive, like the Texans defensive line was beating the dog shit out of him. Like, it's not like a matter of like, you need to throw those away. Like, he had the ball for a second and a half and like he's getting fucking suplexed into the turf. That was crazy.
We got to go back to just saying good game.
Good game.
Walking away.
Good job, bro.
That's it. Good game. Just walk away. Like, you don't have to say nothing more. Like, CJ Stroud, words of mentorship. Like, what's going on here?
Oh,
like he's Oogway, Master Oogway from Kung Fu Panda.
All right. Everyone, go check out the Pick a Side podcast.
They have good Caleb takes. Go check it out.
Yeah. Everyone, tweet out something nice about Caleb Williams right now. Comment it down below. Yeah. Other than that, thanks for coming on, Joel. And Pau Gasol, you can take it away.
Lay down a list of what